So it's great to be here with Alyssa Elliot of Indivisible London. I wanted to have this conversation mostly because it feels like there's a lot of paralysis in the United States. Since Trump's, I guess we're 130 odd days into Trump's second term, and we've sort of seen this just barrage of, ignoring court orders, completely dismantling the federal government. And it seems like the Democrats' one job should be to obstruct that, to try to fight back against that wherever possible. And I find Indivisible really interesting because you guys have been really vocal about the Democrats' failure to do that. So I guess I'd like to start off, obviously we'll get to what Indivisible is doing in London, but I'd like to start off with, tell us sort of where your organization comes from. It was founded during the first Trump term, I believe. So could you just sort of outline, I guess, first of all, what's different about Trump's second term, and then also what Indivisible is working on, what your priorities are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Indivisible started end of 2016, early 2017 in Trump's first term, and it quickly became the largest grassroots resistance movement to Trump. In the first term, there were protests and activations, and Leah and Ezra, the co-executive directors, their main push then was teaching people how to contact their representatives to make their voices heard, because it's something that I find U.S. citizens know about, but they don't know how to do, or making the call is overwhelming and scary. And now it's the least of the things that we need to be doing. And then during the Biden term, I'm sure there were still some things going on. I unfortunately wasn't involved. But then in the second term, like you said, it has just blown everything out of the gate. And they told us exactly what they were going to do. They told us about Project 2025, even though they said they weren't doing it. But they said they were going to flood the zone, and they have. And it's been incredibly effective, unfortunately. And so Indivisible has really, really stepped up. And Americans, U.S. citizens all over the world have really, really stepped up in the last few months. I believe over 1,400 new Indivisible groups have formed since November. So they were just a small team on the national level, and they have just exploded with so much work and so many people to bring in and to educate on how to resist, because it's not useful or safe or effective for people to just jump in with all their passion but no guidance. So what Indivisible on the national level in the States has been doing recently has really been a lot of guidance for new groups, helping people get started, helping them to organize on their local level. That is the key of Indivisible work. Very little comes from the top down. It is all bottom up.
So I guess I'm just trying to think about this. So where does that come in the sense that the Democrats have really struggled, I guess, to form this cohesive bloc? So how does decentralization, as you say, at the local level, is there any aim to primary these people, or is it more just about pushing them to do things in their current term?
It's both, I'd say, and the choice is left up to the local groups. So say if groups in Oregon want to primary someone, probably not, because I'm an Oregon voter and our reps are wonderful. But when it comes down to it, it's not going to be Leah and Ezra saying, hey, Pennsylvania, you need to primary someone. It'll be the local group saying, we think this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to focus our resources and our energy. And when it comes to building that unified opposition, I think that is the most effective way, because it is building this big tent. And one of maybe the best thing the Trump administration is doing for us is making everyone mad. Whatever issue it is, they have turned someone against them. And so if we can welcome everyone into this opposition and know that we will not agree on every aspect and every issue, but that we have to fight the Trump regime regardless of other disagreements, that is how we build that unified opposition. Right.
So I'd be curious to get your thoughts. I spoke to Usama Andrabi, who's the head of the Justice Democrats, and obviously they're sort of on the left of the party. But they bring up that a lot of top Democratic politicians, I think Cory Booker was one of them, Hakeem Jeffries, have taken money from crypto groups and from Silicon Valley groups, a lot of which sort of does tie back indirectly to the Trump administration. And so they see it as fundamentally, I guess, a structural problem. To what extent, I guess, do you agree with that analysis, or is it more?
I do personally, yes. And again, it's not something I think Indivisible is very. they don't make statements on a national level unless it is voted on by all of the group leaders.
Right.
Very democratic. So they're not telling us what the issues are. They're allowing everyone to identify the issues for themselves. Personally, yes. Any politician taking money from the crypto companies is absolutely, I think, unfit for office if they don't denounce those ties. And we see that also with the ties to Tesla and all of Elon Musk's companies.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I was going to come to that. Obviously, we've seen in the UK even there's been big anti-Tesla crackdown.
Yeah, we work really closely with them.
Yeah, I saw you guys were involved in one of the big event back in March, I think. Yeah, talk a little bit about Elon Musk. What is he a good? It seems like he's a good punching bag to sort of highlight the issues that we're seeing with the Trump administration.
Yeah, he's. I find it almost pathetically depressing what a good cartoon villain he is. He was not elected, and he's a billionaire, and his companies have the highest rates of employee injury of, I think, any in the country. They're also the only non-unionized automobile company in the States. He is not a good person to work for. And yet somehow he was given just complete access to the entire United States government and to all the data, which has been very carefully separated by department, so it cannot be consolidated and used against anyone. And that's exactly what we're seeing them do, is using tax records and visa applications and all these different sources of data to target immigrants, whether they were there illegally, which most of them were not, or legally.
Right. I guess that brings me to, so I think back in 2020, we did really see this incredibly unified movement against Trump. And I think it's a big part of what got Biden back in.
Yeah.
But it feels like everything's just a lot more fractured now. And you talked about how, you have to put your disagreements aside. But what's the best way to sort of smooth those difficulties over? Because it seems like, to me at least, it seems like a really difficult task in terms of like creating that same united front again.
I think, there's no one answer, unfortunately, but I think one of the keys is we have to keep pushing. And so far we've seen these mass days of action. They do have effect. They pushed Cory Booker to do his filibuster last month or the month before. And we're seeing slow change from the people who are currently in office. But I think that what we're going to see in the midterms, hoping we get there, is a true tidal wave of who is in office, and that it is going to become clear to every elected official that they have to do what the people want, because it is clear what the people want, and our representatives are not making it happen yet.
Right. So let's come to London. I'm just interested in that. Is this, obviously you've got Indivisible London's here, and it seems like it's mostly Americans living abroad that are
for the most part, but we do have international members as well.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So where do they come into that, and what, I guess, what do you tell them in terms of how Trump's impacting them and why they should get involved?
So we started in March, along with the flood of other new Invisible groups, as a group of U.S. citizens abroad who were, I think, feeling quite impotent of what can we do when we're not even in the country. But we quickly identified that while we do have unique challenges, we also have really unique opportunities. And part of that is conducting kind of grassroots diplomacy and building international ties and coalitions, because the rise of Donald Trump and the rise of the far right in the States is not isolated. And we're seeing it happen in the UK and all over Europe, with Reform here and the AfD in Germany. All of these votes, while the right hasn't won yet, they have risen in very concerning numbers. And so when we have welcomed people into Indivisible London, we are saying that our mission is combating the rise of the global far right. This is not just about Trump. This is not just about the United States. And even if it was, everything that's happening in the States is having global impacts, as we've already seen with the tariffs and immigration and the regime pressuring companies around the world to drop their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, with pulling back support from Ukraine and instead pivoting to support Russia, which puts all of Europe in danger. So it is incredibly unwise for anyone to say, oh, it's happening in the States, but we're fine. I'm glad we're here and that it will never happen here, because that's what we were saying in the States 10 years ago. We never thought something like this would happen in the United States.
Right. So no, it's interesting in that, like, if you look at Canada and Australia, there has been this sort of big liberal push. That's it's a huge shift in the sense that these countries that often sort of acquiesce to the United States in a lot of ways have been sort of taking a stand. We haven't really seen that here. What do you make of? I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say Keir Starmer's kissing up to Trump, but it seems like there's an element of sort of definitely not standing up to him in the way that I think a lot of people would like to see. What do you make of that?
I mean, I think kissing up is the right term. Yeah, we're seeing the UK really, unfortunately, take the lead in bowing to what Trump wants, and there's no reason for it. We're seeing the support of the Canadians and Australians for their new leadership who are standing up to Trump. I don't know why the UK is not. I mean, of course, there are reasons, but the UK knows fascism. Europe knows fascism, and we need to recognize that that's what's happening in the States. And there is no reason to support it. It will not end well for anyone.
Right. So what would you like to see, I guess? Obviously, I think Trump's really unpopular here. And I think there's a state visit coming up in not too long. What would you like to see people in London do? I mean, to get not just to get Keir Starmer on side of that, because I mean that's a difficult task, but just to show, to channel that energy, that distaste for Donald Trump into something useful. But do you have any big events coming up? We
do. And speaking of the state visit, while it's not officially planned, we are working with the Stop Trump Coalition, who's responsible for the major protest in 2018 for that visit. So whenever this one is officially announced, they will be mobilizing to get, again, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. So come to London for that. Say we don't want Donald Trump here. As far as Indivisible, we have events coming up we're working with the Ukraine Solidarity Campaign as well for an event on June 1st, which is a march for the children of Ukraine, for the thousands of children from Ukraine who've been abducted by Russia and brainwashed to hate their homeland. So please join for that. And then Indivisible is putting on a No Tyrants rally on June 14th. That is Donald Trump's birthday and Flag Day, and he is planning, I think, a $90 million military parade for himself in Washington, D.C. So Indivisible in the States is organizing everywhere except D.C. They will leave the streets of D.C. empty for him. So we are doing that in solidarity with that event. It's also King Charles' birthday here, so we're not going with their No Kings language because he's all right. But we're doing No Tyrants, and that'll be at the U.S. Embassy on June 14th. Cool.
That's great. So that brings me to my next sort of something I was wondering about, which is that in this country, and even more so in the U.S., we have seen sort of these massive crackdowns on protests. There's a band member arrested for having a pro-Palestine message here. You've seen students in the U.S., international students, losing their visas over their activism. Do you have any concern that sort of this protest model could be something that Trump would try to take advantage of?
There's been a lot of discussion about that in Indivisible and 5051 and these other resistance groups. And yes, I think what is kind of the consensus is that the Trump regime is waiting for protests to have a hint of violence so they can crack down on them. But that is also a fear tactic to stop protests before they happen. And like Timothy Snyder says on Tyranny, do not obey in advance. Right now is the easiest it will ever be to resist. It will only get harder from here. And one of the main goals of Indivisible right now is to create the conditions for courage, because fear is contagious, but so is courage. And every time there's a protest, there are more people. And every time someone who's never thought they would join a protest in their life will look out their window and say, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll join the next one. And then they do. And it snowballs from there. And really in the States, we need to be creating these conditions where protesting is natural and people are doing it day after day after day. So when the crackdowns come, they continue to do it because it's proven, and I'm sure you've seen Erica Chenoweth's research, that nonviolent resistance movements are 10 times more likely to lead to democracy than movements that turn violent. So we are completely in an anti-violence movement, and that applies for both the United States and the UK.
Are you concerned at all that, I was in the States for Trump won, and I remember I went to a lot of protests in Austin, Texas, and it felt like there was just this courage and momentum there. And I guess something that I've noticed in just speaking to people in both the UK and the US is that there's a sort of I don't know, people have become kind of just apathetic and tired, and it feels like a never-ending fight. Yeah. How do you try to encourage people? What do you say to people that feel that way?
I get it. It's really hard. And it is honestly a struggle every single day to get up and see the news from the day before and see what new horrific things have been happening to people and to the environment and to policy. And the only things that I am finding now as sparks of hope are the community that we're building with Indivisible and working with people who do care. And it's exactly what we were saying of creating those conditions. The more that people see other people care and the more they see progress from the actions we're taking, I think the more people will join. And I'm curious, I'd love to hear more about the people that you've spoken to in the States especially, but I think a lot of the issue between what international audiences are seeing from the States is that they're not seeing the resistance. There have been protests, I think, every single day in the States since Trump won, or at least since he was inaugurated. But those are not coming across in most of the media. Like Rachel Maddow is doing a great job of highlighting them, but I mean, the New York Times not, the Washington Post not. And so that leads to this sense of like, oh, well, the Americans aren't doing anything, why would we? And I think it also decreases the like the knowledge of the threat of it coming here, because the UK is on exactly the same trajectory as the United States was, with the themes of isolationism and the false blame on immigrants as the reason for the issues in the country. It's the same playbook, and it's the playbook they tell us they're using. You know, Trump idolizes Viktor Orban, and now we're surprised that the States is somehow following in Hungary's footsteps. Right. Like, we know what they're doing, so we have playbooks to resist it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here.
Right. No, I guess so I've talked to mostly like younger progressive activists in the US and here. And I guess there's a prevailing sense that it's sort of the two-party system dynamic, that they don't like the Democrats, or a lot of people here increasingly don't like Labor. Yeah. And sort of fighting fascism to them just means supporting that party they don't really like. And I guess it's really interesting. I think it's really important what you guys are doing, sort of building something outside of that structure. That, I mean, obviously connected to it in ways where it needs to be. But yeah, I think that seems like the big obstacle to overcome to get a lot of people involved is to convince them that there could be a real democracy where they could have their views heard. So yeah, talk a little bit about, I know you guys do a lot of stuff around sort of building a better democracy. You've talked about that. So what's your, how do you convince people that that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it starts on that local level and showing people in their local Indivisible group that they have power and that they can affect things in their local community. Because, of course, you're not going to be able to go to the White House and make a change on day 2, but you can run for office if you're in the States locally. You can be on the school board, and you can start to learn how these systems work, because they're things that I think people in my generation never really considered. I mean, the school board was a bunch of old people, and I didn't know what they did. But it's really there where the power begins and where you learn how it works and how you can work within it. And I think we're seeing that with, I can't think of his name, but he's a young representative who was in one of the school shootings. So he has grown up having this gun violence in schools. And so he has made that his platform, is like, we need to keep children safe. And he's now leading this side of the DNC, which I think is very important. And personally, I don't consider myself a Democrat. I am further left than the Democrats, but I also recognize that we have to work with them to move forward. And I think writing that off is also just playing into Trump's hands, because they want you to feel powerless. Right. And so we are showing people that we have the power, and that's what we do by growing the movement, is showing people, look how many people agree with you and are against this. That's the only way we can do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I look at the Democrats, I think of, James Carville coming out and saying, like, lay down, play dead.
Thankfully, we haven't.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's like a significant chunk of the party that just sort of says, wait out the storm. They'll implode on their own. I'd appreciate just your insights on what's so dangerous about that strategy, and also just short-sighted, it feels to me.
Incredibly short-sighted. Yeah, I mean, I can see where he was coming from in an idealistic world, but we're not just going to roll out the red carpet for them to do anything they want. And I think thankfully we've had the judiciary system standing up to Trump because, Congress, I mean, the Democrats are in the minority, so they don't have the power anyway, but they should be opposing every single thing the Republicans are putting up for vote. I can't believe they confirmed any of the nominations. And I was last night, I get confused with the time zone, but their 1 a.m. Vote on the big, beautiful bill. Why are these things happening in the middle of the night? They know they're not popular. They know that people don't want it. But I got sidetracked here. Yes, we cannot lay down. And every win that we have had against this regime is because the people have spoken out about it. And again, it has not once started with the people in Congress. It has started with the people pressuring their representatives to stand up and do something.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up. I'd like to talk, like, what do you see as the biggest wins so far? I know that, I remember videos of Democratic Congress people standing outside of the Treasury building when Elon Musk was sending his coders in there. Talk a little bit about what do you think your biggest victories are so far, and what lessons have you learned from them?
Yeah, I think a lot of the victories have been in the courts, with the sad side note that we're also discovering we don't have a way to enforce the executive branch obeying the courts.
Right, because they enforce it themselves, technically, right?
Exactly. However, that's kind of the thread we're hanging on to right now, is that even the Supreme Court, at least, is, telling Trump that he has to bring back I've forgotten his name too. One of the men deported illegally.
Abrego
yes,
Garcia, yeah.
Thank you. Because there is absolutely no reason for him to be there. It was illegal, and 9-0, the Supreme Court said he has to come home. So that ruling is a win, even though it hasn't happened yet. We're seeing wins in people like Cory Booker standing up. We're seeing wins in last night from the bill. They struck a motion that would have sold off, I think, 500 million acres or something like that of public land into private ownership, of public parks and things in Utah and Nevada. We're seeing fighting back on the local level of people resisting ICE arrests of their neighbors. Like the small town, I think, of 1,300 people where a mother and her children were taken by ICE, and 1,000 people from this town of 1,300 showed up to protest, and they got them home. So it is, we are beginning to see this power. Because like you said, it has been tiring and it's exhausting. And I mean, this administration has only been 130 something days, but it feels like it has been years, and people are already worn down. But it's more like a choir where if you're singing the same note, some people have to drop out and breathe, but others carry it. So when someone gets tired, someone else has the means to step up, and we keep it going that way, and more people keep joining. And that, I think, is the best sign of hope that I've seen so far. And we're seeing that in London as well. I mean, I'm getting emails every single day of people searching out ways to resist, finding Indivisible London and saying, how do I join? How can I help?
So what do you make of, I guess, the other big sort of anti-Trump public display that I've seen is AOC and Bernie's sort of oligarchy tour.
Yeah.
A lot of people sort of frame that as being almost a left-wing version of populism, in the same way they call Donald Trump or Nigel Farage populist. What do you think it sounds kind of like that actually meshes quite well with your sort of local emphasis on local action.
Yeah.
So what do you make of that? Is that the right strategy to frame it that way?
Absolutely. And I think another thing to remember is that there is no necessarily right strategy. It's going to take so many different kinds of action from so many different kinds of people. And I think that's an incredible action they've been taking. And they are showing in these huge turnouts in places like Nampa, Idaho, one of the reddest places of the red, just hundreds of thousands of people showing up saying, we are not okay with what is happening. And looking at Bernie and AOC, who have for so long been seen as a left fringe, even though they're not, and compared to politics anywhere else in the world, they're barely even left. But we're seeing this shift of Americans finally recognizing that they have been taken advantage of by Republicans, and that even people who voted for Trump are not getting what they voted for. So yeah, I think it's great to galvanize people the way AOC and Bernie have. And Bernie's going to be here on the 30th of the month.
That's right.
A lot of Indivisibles will be there. And yeah, I think, anyone who is energizing people and giving them hope, absolutely can't go wrong with that.
Right. I'd also like to come back to, I'd liaised with someone else in your organization, Leah, about this sort of Mitch McConnell playbook. And I'd appreciate if you could sort of unpack that. It's as a way of, historically, the Republicans were really good at blocking everything Democrats tried to do.
Yep.
And I'd just like if you could sort of cover how that could be a way to fight back against Trump.
Yeah. Like you said before, since Indivisible is not affiliated with any party, it's one of our big strengths. We can really push back on the Democrats when they are failing, and they have been failing. Like we said before, there is no reason that they should have confirmed any of Trump's nominees for any of these positions. None of them are qualified, not a single one. And even with the bill that went through last night, no one should have voted for that. One of the we've seen people voting through crypto bills, which why? There's no reason if they are truly working for the people. So when we see them vote that way, it shows us they are not working for us. They are working for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to it seems like as long as, after Citizens United, after, just you get first past the post elections, all these different, the Electoral College, there's just so many systematic things in the U.S. that benefit people like Trump. So in a longer term, I guess, what would you like to see to sort of prevent us from being in this position again?
Yeah, I wish I had a clear answer for that, but I think it's something that is going to take a lot of people's ideas and a lot of people's effort, because our voting system is incredibly flawed. And I think what this rise of Trump and Trumpism is showing us is all of the flaws in the American experiment. Because at the time the country formed, it was new. We didn't know how it was going to work out. And some aspects of it have been great, and some aspects of its democracy have been replicated around the world. But it was built on an unstable foundation that was taking advantage of certain communities. And we're now seeing that taken to its extreme. And I think it's not something where we want to burn it down and build it from the ground up. And I think that's a popular idea when you get to the further left ideas, but that ignores the harm that it does to everyone by burning the system down. And Trump is doing a good enough job of burning it down himself.
Right.
So we don't need to destroy anything more than has already been destroyed. We need to focus on saving what we can, repairing and rebuilding with voices from all the communities of the United States, and with an eye to the world as well, because it's absurd to think about the United States of America in isolation. It has never been in isolation, and it has impact on every country in the world. And we can't survive without the rest of the world.
Right.
So I think it will depend on young people. I think it will depend on bridging generational gaps and potentially changing the direction of the Democratic Party. It will need to address the voting issues with gerrymandering that make the electoral college so different from what we see in the popular vote. And it's a really big job, and it's going to take a really long time. I get so many people coming to me saying, "Oh, I can't take this for 3.5 more years." I think it's going to be a lot longer than that.
Right.
This is truly an ultra marathon, and we cannot expect quick wins. We have to celebrate the wins that we get, but this is not going to be solved in the next 3 years.
Right. No, it seems like people look at Trump and Nigel Farage and the rising far right in Europe as like a very isolated sort of, they're just outliers. But I think there's like deeper structural problems. You can look at polls in the US and UK, and I think in Europe too, that trust in politics is just all time bottoming out. So I guess if you just talk a little more about sort of connecting, I think you guys do a really good job of trying to look at those deeper structural problems. But if you just talk a little more about bringing people's hopes up for that politics can be something that they can like believe in. It's
a challenge, honestly. But I think one point to make on that is that believing that politics doesn't work only benefits
Right.
the people who are already at the top, because they don't want you engaged. They don't want you to know what they're doing. They don't want you to resist them. And so to make politics work for you, you have to get into politics. And people who say like, oh, I'm not political, well, then you've just given up. You have no power. You gave up the power you did have. And the governments are meant to work for the people, but we have to keep that power for ourselves and convince our friends and neighbors that they need to take their power back as well. And so I think it does look a lot like a lot more people running for office than have ever considered it. It's something I'm considering. When Trump got elected, I knew immediately I wasn't going to move back to the States like I'd been planning. But as it gets a bit further in, I'm thinking, well, maybe my role is to go have some small role as a representative somewhere. It wasn't my dream to go into politics, but it wasn't my dream to have to fight fascism in my lifetime. Right. We get what we're given, or what we've allowed. And I think that's part of the problem, that we assumed it could never happen there. And so we were unprepared, and we just let things slide until we've gotten to this point. And even now people are somehow not all seeing what it is. But for those of us who are aware enough of history and aware enough of these patterns, I think we do have a duty to stand up and do things we maybe don't want to do. Maybe it is giving up a different career so that we can save the chance at that career for the next generation.
Right. Yeah, individual sacrifice, I guess, on some level is necessary. I always remember the quote, you might not care about politics, but politics cares about you.
Absolutely.
No, that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to, any events in London you want to plug for our audience?
I think, just the ones I said before. So we've got June 1st, March for the Children of Ukraine. June 14th is No Tyrants Day. July 5th will be a day of friendship between the U.S. and Canada, and August 16th between U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And then in the fall, there will be an International Day of Friendship as well. And those events with Canada and Mexico will be with groups lining both of the borders in the U.S. and Canada and U.S.-Mexican border. So more mass days of action in the States that we're following here.
Great. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.